Well, we now know what future F1 cars will look like, and it looks old school, like a compilation of Formula One's greatest hits. But I bet you want to know whether DRS or not exists anymore. Well, it doesn't. Kind of. The brand new regulations for Formula One going into 2026 have finally been released, and even though there may be some more revisions further down the line, the fact that we are now getting public information about these regs means that they are pretty much locked in for all of the teams to work with. But the most important things to take away from these regulations are the fact that it's a smaller car, it's a lighter car, and it's a car that's going to be more competitive simply for the fact that we will no longer have to see DRS trains anymore, because DRS has essentially been nerfed. It's been commoditized. Everybody gets to use it for all of the straights. There's no activation zone. So long as there's a straight, it will open up. Not just the rear flap, but the front flap as well. That's completely bonkers. Apparently the active aero, where the driver can push a button for certain areas where they can change the flap so they just open up a little bit in certain different directions, so it kind of looks like a fighter plane or jet or something. It's going to look incredibly trippy on the cameras. It's a bit harder or easier than DRS, but I guess they can pre-program that. But the main thing about this is that thanks to this electric and internal combustion engine hybrid system where it's 50-50 essentially in terms of power output, this means we get a push-to-pass feature, or technically, as I see on the map here, a manual override mode. And as the acronym would imply, oh mama! It can be used for a certain amount of time in a given lap. Basically, this is just a more powerful version of KERS, and I am all for that. It's a lot more granular, and it's not just something where you can rely on a DRS train. You will have to be a bit more strategic with it. And then there's the actual look of the car itself. The cars look lovely. To me, I like this look because I'm an old fuddy-duddy that remembers the F1 ages of the 90s, 2000s, and this to me just screams of classic Formula One. The cars are slightly smaller, not quite as small as what they were back in the 2000s. They're about 10 centimeters narrower, which may not seem all that much, but it is enough, and especially when they're a little bit shorter as well, it will be just that little bit difference where you can actually try and make an overtake, because otherwise with these bigger cars you would have gone, oh no, it's just that little bit too short. With these smaller cars you probably would go for that overtake, especially with that push to pass feature. You would have enough momentum going into it, so that in of itself will increase competition, and that I'm pretty excited for. There's going to be a lot more control with the driver, and also we are now no longer going to be seeing those DRS trains, and hopefully overtaking will actually be solved for good, because all of these aerodynamic features, they are pretty much made to try and prevent dirty air being spewed out the back, like what the 2022 regulations tried to solve, but those pesky F1 engineers managed to solve their way out of the problem within a year. Aston Martin being one of the most notable examples with their rear wing, where in 2022, if you got stuck behind an Aston Martin down the straight, good luck trying to overtake it, and that rear wing system got banned. And even though these cars may look a bit more primitive, they don't have the front wheel covers or anything like that, or that space age rear wing. It looks a bit more boxy like the old rear wings do. I think they do look more like the classic cars, which people do remember fondly. Although when I was in the live chat of the FIA premiere, a lot of people were really downing on it. They were not happy with it, especially when it came to the power unit talk. Everyone was going, we want V8s, we want W12s. Basically, every single configuration of combustion engine was being thrown at the FIA, even though we already knew what was going to be used, and everyone was so disappointed. But I still think it's a pretty cool thing, in the fact that we can use battery power for push to pass, and it's just going to be generally a lot of fun. And there's sustainable fuel, we already knew that part, but these little aerodynamic tweaks are really fascinating. And I do like the overall look, because people want to go back to the old days of Formula One. This, to me, looks right. It's got 2000s in there, it's got 2010s in there, and it's not completely drowning in aerodynamic parts. There are some barge-board units, and the Twitter user Dr. Robs actually brought out some really good points, because he did a really good breakdown of the analysis of the teasers that the FIA put out yesterday, and it shows that ground effect will no longer be as much of a priority, thanks to the diffuser being a lot smaller, meaning that all of the stuff underneath the surface, the Venturi tunnels and all of that stuff, it will no longer be a priority. which may explain why Ferrari might not be all that interested in hiring Adrian Newey anymore, since he's pretty much the godfather when it comes to ground effect. And that really gives you a clear indicator that aero is no longer as much of a priority anymore. Engine grunt is going to be very important. You need to get that battery and internal combustion engine combination down pat, because if you don't, you are going to suffer down those straights, especially when you can reduce the drag by default. That means I think Toto Wolff is salivating right now. He's pretty much going to be getting onto the blower and says, yes, I know we've had our differences in the past, but please, I really want to speak to Max. No, I will do anything. I am sorry for ignoring you. Mercedes will be in the pound seat, I assure you, because they know how to make a really stonkingly fast engine. And with aerodynamics no longer being an issue, it doesn't matter about ground effect. You just refine what you already have. It's made it incredibly clear that since you're not going to have to worry about what's going on down on the floor, all of the stuff on the surface will matter more. And you won't have to worry about being stuck behind a car because, as I said, the aerodynamics are not going to be pushing out all the air trying to disrupt the air behind the car. It's all going to be kept inwards. And also, another thing that might be really important, because Dr. Obbs pointed this out, having that smaller diffuser might mean that all the spray that you get out from behind the car will be a lot smaller. You won't get that huge waft. And that will probably mean that you don't need those really weird wheel covers that make an F1 car look like Noddy's car. And one thing is for sure, that will be really, really good, because that actually means, in theory, when it gets wet, we won't have to red flag the race or just crawl around behind the safety car and just go 50 miles an hour, even though we've got monsoon tyres that in theory could handle the spray in the rain. It means that we can actually have a bit more versatility when it comes to the overall weather situation. But when it comes to these cars, I'm actually really excited for this. It looks a lot simpler, the cars are smaller, they are more agile, lighter, even though it's only 30 kilos, but that's still better than nothing, because the weights have been creeping up over the best part of 15 years or so. They're now finally going back down again. But James Vowles over at Williams did make out a very good point, that he doubts that any team is going to be getting down to that 768 kilo weight limit. He is not even trying to get down to that limit. According to Williams, they have reached a sensible solution when it comes to the weight. So hopefully they won't be 15, 20 kilos overweight like they are with the current car, the FW46. And I think if you're trying to develop the first iteration of the 2026 cars, don't try and get down to the minimum weight limit, because it might be a fool's errand. Just make sure that the car's reliable and it actually works. You can figure out the problem in good time. The RB18 of 2022, the Red Bull one, that was overweight, even that one. And eventually they did get it down over time, but it's all about priorities. And this is something really, really cool. I'm just giving my basic thoughts here. I'm just looking on the FIA website, and it's just really impressive. It may look a little bit less futuristic, but sometimes futuristic stuff doesn't mean that it's automatically better. It looks more like an F1 car should. And even though we are getting a power unit which is half electric, and we could easily just go and watch Formula E, I mean, the Gen 4 cars do look pretty awesome, to be fair. I just think it's a really good solution which is relevant to the current set of regulations. And this might not be the case forever. It may only be around for a few years, because there is talk that for the 2030 regulations, we might be getting a completely different solution, maybe running off of the idea of sustainable fuels if that continues to evolve. And with Sebastian Vettel knocking around, who knows if he might be consulted by Formula 1 and the FIA, where you might get V8s with sustainable fuels, e-fuels. So that means you're not polluting the planet, and you're also getting the old school sound. We don't know the sound for sure yet, but in terms of the overall look and feel, and just general vibe of the 2026 car, I like it. It just seems less complex, less fiddly, and those front wings, the 2022 ones, they may look cool and all, but they look incredibly problematic and incredibly sensitive. I was never a really big fan of the wide front wings. The wide rear wings, though, they do look really cool, because again, those boxy little ones, it just didn't look right. These ones, though, this 2026 car, looks right to me. I really like it, and I really love the paint job that the FIA used, and the overall design package of it, because we never really got a design package for the 22 regs. Ross Brawn was just like, there's your car. Engineering geekery stuff, there you go. Now, there's a whole complete nice package that they presented in a 15-minute video. That was really cool, that they actually put the effort into it, the FIA. But the big question here is though, did Andretti get these regulations through the mail? Well, they probably did, since the FIA did greenlight them to actually compete in Formula 1, should they ever get there. But based on the reception of this design, it was certainly mixed, as in people weren't exactly thrilled that it doesn't look futuristic. I think it's right, and that's just me showing my age. I'm just like, yes, it's the old style of F1 cars. Oh my ticker! I don't care, these look great to me. And I'm so happy that brand new Formula 1 fans might get to even have a snifter of what the old 2000s cars look like without having to look at the old F1 Archive Grand Prix. This to me looks really, really cool. I love the design, I love the overall vibe of it, and I love what they're trying to do. The simple fact of in-wash aerodynamics, less of the ground effect, will actually make overtaking genuinely easier. And no DRS, that being democratized, that's great. And then just button, I want to pass this person, boom, there you go. And that aerodynamic active thing, I don't know how it works for sure, but it could be really fun. And by the way, check out Dr. Obbs on Twitter. He is a really, really learned guy when it comes to physics and aerodynamics. He will easily be able to explain these new regulations more than I could, so give him some love. But either way, if you're brand new to this channel to find out what happened with F1 and what it's going to look like, welcome. And if you want to get an idea about what it's like up here in the attic, go and have a look at this video, or just maybe subscribe or check out the Patreon. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.